I'm Simon Lipson, and welcome to the Nice One Cyril podcast, where you can smell the desperation. Today's episode, who do we blame now? Okay, because here's the thing. Daniel is leaving tonight on a plane. Sorry about that. He's off to live in America. Daniel Levy, if Gary off Twitter is to be believed. The man we've blamed for transfer chaos, crappy managers, £7 hot dogs, global recession, global warming, everything actually, he's gone. So now what? Well, thankfully, Spurs royalty, Julie Welch, is here, along with regular Mona, Kevin Acott, and shiny, optimistic newbie, Dave Bradshaw. We'll soon drag him down to our level. We've got gripes, nostalgia, bit of therapy, and we'll deep dive into Levy's leaving. Was he pushed? Or was he pushed? We'll look at our various chairmen over the last 50 years, one of whom thought Christian Gross was a good idea. We've got the Champions League draw, which we forgot to talk about last week. Bit of nostalgia, some totally reliable predictions for West Ham. Strap in. It's Nice One Cyril. Nice One Cyril. Welcome to Nice One Cyril, episode 4. Have we got anything worth chatting about? Well, let's see. When was it? Last Thursday, was it? We lost our beloved chairman, and I'm sure there were tears everywhere. Dave Bradshaw, microbiologist, no less. I mean, it's a bit scary having someone on with an actual brain, so this could turn nasty. Dave, thoughts about the leaving of the great Daniel?
I must admit, I'm not a match-going fan nowadays, so, you can take my analysis at that level. I must admit I'm ambivalent on it. I think he's put the club, as a lot of people have noticed, in a noted recently, that in a very strong financial position. And I think in lots of ways, the £7 hot dogs you mentioned and that sort of stuff, of course, but he's done it in an organic way, I would say. And my take is really, I'm not sure what we're looking for. Are we looking for some dodgy money from somewhere? Are we looking for a Middle Eastern despot or whatever it might be to come in and take over the club? Those things don't sit easily with me. Looking at others, if somebody came in, bought us all the new shiny players, maybe we would change our tune, I suppose, like lots of football supporters probably would do. But I feel like, obviously the stadium's fantastic. The facilities are fantastic. We're in a great place in lots of ways, but of course, 2 trophies in 25 years and all that jazz.
I don't think anyone would, quibble with the notion that Levy's taken a slightly moribund club 25 years ago worth 80 million quid and turned it into an absolute juggernaut of a PLC. So we've never really doubted his business acumen. To me, Levy's kind of the last of the old style chairmen, certainly as big as, certainly as far as big clubs are concerned. The guy who is the last word on everything. Nowadays, the big clubs tend to be these huge conglomerates with, hierarchies left, right and centre. You don't really know who's making the decisions. Is that really inevitable? Was it inevitable that we would have to follow suit if we were going to try and be more successful on the playing field?
Well, I've sort of changed over the last week, actually. I think reading about Levy and about the decision and who made the decision and who runs the club, I've sort of shifted into thinking, actually, he wasn't that old-style chairman making all the decisions anyway, that actually the Lewis family was making those decisions. He obviously was doing stuff day to day, and he was the sort of public face of some of their decision making. I'm not excusing, some of the decisions he made, hate him for still. The furloughing during COVID, the ESL stuff, all the lying about he wasn't the only one, and we weren't the only club involved in that. There's stuff he did, and also the him being a great businessman thing. Yes, but he's limited. that he made some weird decisions, or the Lewis family made some weird decisions, and he went along with them. I'm not sure, particularly in terms of recruitment of managers and of players. So I feel overall optimistic, but we'll have to see. I have similar reservations to Dave, I think, about which human rights abusing Middle Eastern country is going to take us over.
Yeah. I have to say that's a concern for me. I'm sure for a lot of us, we don't really want to get involved with. I mean, it's no good taking their money if we're going to sit there having a go at their human rights records. I mean, it's utterly ridiculous. So, Julie, I asked Julie actually earlier between Daniel's going and today, whether she'd actually met the great man himself, and I think you mentioned some sort of mutual simpering between you.
If you remember, there was a great film which Spurs made about Farewell to the Lane. This must have been, 2016? Anyway, I was in it, so I got invited to the showing. And I was introduced to Daniel Levy, and, it was, we just sort of simpered at each other, and, move on. And to be honest, I actually had a longer chat with Margaret Thatcher when I met her. I mean, I just don't think you could call Daniel Levy a great conversationalist, basically. But it was nice, just to see that he was human, not a robot. Actually, I feel quite upset for him because, the Lewis family, Joe Lewis, obviously the organ grinder. And I didn't really sort of know till, they pushed Daniel Levy out last week that really, he had very highly paid serfdom, didn't he? All the decisions aid must have come from on high. And I just felt, Ozymandias, consider my works ye mighty and despair, or whatever it is. His legacy is the stadium. I think he's now gone off to lick his wounds in Florida, is it? Something like that. Mm-hmm. But I just felt very sorry for him because he didn't actually see it coming. I mean, when my friend Martin Murphy, who wrote the stage play The Ghost of White Hart Lane, incidentally, he actually messaged me saying, Levy's gone. And I just it was like, some of you may remember when Sol Campbell signed for Arsenal. It was that sort of moment.
Yeah.
The shock moment. Where were you when you heard Daniel Levy had been booted out of Spurs? So it was like that. Yeah. And to be honest, I hate change. I'm full of dread for the future. What's it going to be like? I mean, is it just going to be more of the same? Is it going to be a disaster? You saw I presume everybody's seen the message that the club put out today. Tottenham Hotspur is not for sale, which to me indicates it probably is for sale. It's like one of those sort of mating rituals that take place. No doubt Amanda Staveley will come up with another offer before the end of the month.
Interesting you mentioned Daniel, being perhaps you didn't have the greatest conversation with him. I also met Margaret Thatcher when she came into my classroom when I was about 12. She was Minister for Education, and we all had to stand up and nod and bow. So I was just to point out, I was a scholarship oik at a public school, so that's why that happened. Dave, he wasn't much of a communicator, was he, Daniel? He really didn't know what he was thinking. And then we had this rather unusual declaration before the season started saying, we want to win everything. Champions League, we want to win the league. And suddenly there was Levy all cheerful and joyful, which kind of made this sacking, which is effectively what it is, all the more surprising.
It really did. It really did. As everyone said, it really was such a kind of shock. And I was struck by how much coverage it got on Sky. I mean, Sky had nothing. Sky, the football, they had run out of the transfer window stuff by then. But I mean, they just spent the whole time talking about it, didn't they?
Yeah, they had to stop talking about Manchester United for 5 minutes, didn't they? Which was extraordinary. Yeah.
And you just kind of felt that, as you say, that he was clearly had all kinds of plans. Obviously, I felt it was quite a good window to your point going. I thought we got up to a fairly solid, I know there was a number of polls online. I thought we got up to a fairly solid 7 or maybe even a 7.5 with the recent additions. And then, of course, it's all, from his point of view, come crashing down. One of the other things I thought was that there was never any doubt that he was a real fan. And I think that's if we're thinking of Amanda Staveley or others, there are clearly those kind of people who the clubs they're just passing through. Daniel Levy was a real fan, wasn't he? I mean, he went to all the games for all the things that obviously people have criticised him for. So that was something that always came across. He felt our pain, I think, as much as any of the rest of us, really, when things weren't going right.
It's an interesting point, though. He certainly was a fan. My sense with Levy, and it's something I criticised him for several times, many times actually over the years, was that he allowed business to get in the way of his fandom. He forgot that fans are not bothered about accounts and the bottom line and profits, and they don't care. They care about, are we going to buy this bloke from Real Madrid? Are we going to win anything? And it's all about passion. We are all about loyalty and passion. And I think he lost sight a little bit of that, and it became about the business. And I think he was doing the best he possibly could for Spurs. But in his mind, the best was, how successful a business can we be? And, actually you're more successful if you start winning things. We are now in a period of flux. That makes a change for us, doesn't it? Normally it's on the managerial playing side. It's impossible, isn't it, to predict where things will go from here, but it looks like Vinay Venkatesham is going to be the key voice, the biggest voice in the boardroom now. Is that the way you see it?
Yeah, I get that impression. I was reading his statement. I think that was this afternoon, wasn't it? And it's hard to disagree with anything he said. He didn't really say anything in particular. I think there are little nudges at Levy for focusing more on the business than, I think they're trying to get fans on side and saying, we're not going to be like him. We understand you, and we care about the football. We care about the team. We'll have to see. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. It does feel, I felt sad when he went briefly, but I actually do feel a little bit more positive now. I think I'm probably contradicting myself because I'm going from thinking, yes, there's a real opportunity here for us to go up a level. And then I think upper level potentially means being a Newcastle or a City or a Chelsea owned by people I don't want to own my club. But I don't know. Things are changing. I think I'll say it publicly. I think over the next 5 years, we will improve in terms of the football. We will improve our standing because I think we're probably in a better position now than we were a year ago.
Okay. I mean, I think with Levy, you kind of had a focus. You knew where kind of the buck stopped, whether the Lewis family were the ultimate, kind of voice. You knew where you were with Levy. Right now, I don't know where we are. And so it's all very well sort of saying, well, look, we're trying to improve on the playing side, because after all that, we're a football club. That's what we should be about. But I can't see the route to, to getting there. I always liked Levy, Julie. I wouldn't call myself a happy clapper, but I backed Levy because I really did believe he was trying to do the best for the club. And I thought that a lot of the criticism that was fired at him was nasty, ad hominem, and anti-Semitic. And that the last of those was what troubled me more than anything. Some of the comments, some of the imagery we saw online to represent people's concept of Levy was really obnoxious and disgusting. So because of that, I kind of recoiled and went the other way and thought, well, I'm gonna back him till it kills me. But I always thought, you can't see a way forward with him to winning, to being Liverpool, to being one of those clubs, Man City. Do you think this new setup is going to mean we're just going to buy everyone now? I mean, we can afford everyone, we can buy everyone, and we're going to be the next City.
I'm going to happen anytime soon. I have a feeling it might potter on the same as it's pottered on for the last few years. I'm not sure why they got rid of Levy, but did hear that it might have been that he was trying to organise the same club, which they didn't want at the time. Now, I have no idea whether this is actually true or not. I would need more convincing that the new regime actually know what they're doing. And as I said earlier, I just hate change. I didn't mind Levy. I thought it was okay. And I thought, the Lewis family had stuck him there to take all the shit, basically. And he did, and he'd turn up at a match and he'd sit there with that little shy smile, looking faintly embarrassed. And, he must, he sat there through, particularly this season just gone, he sat there through an awful lot of bad football. I thought, he's actually a decent guy. As I also said, he was obviously very, very well paid to take all of the shit. But I thought he was okay. I'm quite sorry he's gone because at least he was a known quantity. And from my years sort of reporting football and writing about it, my only sort of takeaway is nobody knows anything. And that's basically my attitude now.
Well, with respect, if you follow Gary of Chelmsford on Twitter, he does know everything. Who we're buying, selling. He knew about Levy years ago. So it's worth following him. So Dave, let's just kind of move on a little bit. The club has, we finally won something. It's and a decent trophy at that. My dad always used to say, only one team can win the league. Only one team can win the cup. And the chances of it being the team we support, very slim. Are we kind of pissing in the wind about this, really? I mean, for all these years, we've thought of Spurs as a big player. We should be up there. We deserve to be up there. But I don't think any team really deserves to be up there. You only get to where you're going to be on merit and increasingly with enough money. Are we ever going to scale those heights?
Yeah, it's a really interesting one, this, isn't it? Because you're absolutely right. I mean, so there's 3 domestic trophies, and I guess effectively you're only ever going to be in one of the European, and, well, I suppose maybe you can be 2 if you start in the Champions and then drop down 1. But that leaves, so four trophies that you're aiming at every season, and there's at least 6 big clubs that think they're entitled to them all the time. And then there's obviously several others that have got that ambition. And I think the other thing that sort of strikes me is that how relatively obviously uncompetitive the league has become. We're not obviously at the level that they are in Spain or Scotland or 1 or 2 other, Portugal maybe, etc., or Germany. So we're stronger than that maybe, but not that much really if we look in the last 20 years. And again, I kind of do wonder whether in the longer run, I mean, obviously the commercial, powerhouse that the Premier League is doesn't seem to have suffered from the fact that it's only ever won by a very, very small number of clubs. And I wonder how long that can go on because, if you think of, sport should always be about competition. And often when you switch on, sadly, when you often switched on watching us against the really big teams, against the Liverpool in particular, I guess, in recent years, you're kind of thinking, how many is it going to be, really? And as long as if we stop Salah getting a hat trick, that will be a triumph. So it's been a bit of a tough watch.
It's really only City that we beat all the time, isn't it?
City was the one shining light there, wasn't it, really?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I know you've got something you want to talk about a bit later. We'll come to it, which is, development of players and also the way that clubs have ceased to be representative, really, of their local communities, certainly the big clubs. We used to have Harry Kane. That was about it. Now we've got nobody. Anyway, we'll come on to that because, Julie, I know you've got a little bit for us about the previous chairman. Now, when I first started watching Spurs in 1970, I think it was Sidney Wale, who was your typical anonymous geezer, cigar smoking, round the board table, dispensing kind of authority. Take us through some those, because we've only had 4, haven't we? Is that right? Since
the golden era of the local businessmen who owned football clubs. So the double winning chairman, so to speak, was a guy called Fred Behrman, who his family had a department store, Leytonstone High Street, which was a lovely place. And I used to go there when I was about 4 years old with Mummy. And, we'd go to the haberdashery department. And of course, this Aladdin's cave of haberdashery and naff shoes and was what sort of supplied Spurs with, let's say, Dave Mackay, John White, etc., etc. So the other thing about Fred Behrman was that he is immortalised in a photo of the Spurs Christmas party, 1961. All the players are there. There's Danny Blanchard wearing a silly hat and Dave Mackay wearing a silly hat and all that sort of stuff. And Danny Blanchard has given Fred Berman a Christmas present, which is a copy of Lady Chatterley's Lover. I don't know how that happened or why, but anyway, so that's the immortal Fred Berman. And sadly, Berman's department store is no longer with us, nor is Fred. So onward then to slightly later era, late 60s, Sydney Whale and a guy called Arthur Richardson. Now, Sydney Whale had a local factory which made nuts and bolts, and I think that Arthur Richardson had a local car dealership or something like that. So these were absolutely typical of how clubs were owned in the 60s and 70s. And then we move on to these when everything starts to change. And so anyway, the great sin of the Spurs board in the 70s, of course, was that they sacked Bill Nicholson. And then, stupid, they gave the job to Terry Neal, an Arsenal player. The only sort of redemptive part of this narrative is that they gave Keith Birkinshaw the job after that. But then they absolutely cocked up totally because they sold out to Irving Scholar. Now, this is my hobby horse because I think that Irving Scholar, is the illustrative example of what happens when you let a fan own a club. Now, I don't know if you've got any thoughts on that, maybe?
Well, I mean, he was a fan, and I think, we all think we could do a better job than whoever's running a club, right? We think, because we think it's simple. It's not simple. It's incredibly complicated. I mean, even more so now where you have these difficult, complex corporate structures and hierarchies. And can you imagine what went into building that stadium? What went through the offices of Levy and Co. And you can't just do that on a whim. You can't do that just because you fancy it. I mean, Kev, although actually, with respect, I think, Kev, you could run Spurs in your own image, which what would be, let's have a little fantasy moment here. If you could had limitless funds and ultimate authority, where would you go tomorrow? What would you do?
Jeez. Thanks for that. Thanks for that question, Simon. Yeah. Good question. What would I do? I would focus on recruitment.
Mm-hmm.
I think Levy has done that badly, or Lewis or whoever has done that badly over the last 25 years. By focusing on recruitment, I'm not sure what I mean. I mean, other clubs do it well and we don't. And whether it's stealing the actual individuals from other clubs who have done it well, or just learning from them. How do Liverpool particularly, but City as well, make early bids, get people in? Some of that's about salary. I think it's sorting recruitment out. I think the stadium, which I know I'm going to talk about later, will sort of run itself with the right, and presumably the right people are in place already to do that. So I think I would focus on recruitment. I wouldn't do anything about Frank. I would keep the manager as he is at the moment. And, I might, ideally, eventually I would sort of turn it into an anarcho-syndicalist commune, but that's probably about 10 years down the line. I'd fool everyone first, credibly capitalist first.
So essentially, we've got to play the same game as City and Liverpool. It's throw the money. Really, you're throwing the money at the solution, aren't we? I mean, there's no way you're going to buy, Isaac. I mean, first of all, you buy Isaac because you're the champions. We came 17th, and so that makes life a lot harder. But even when we've been up there, particularly after we made the Champions League fund 2019, we didn't capitalise on what at that point marked us out as a club to be reckoned with. I mean, David, that seemed almost like a watershed moment that, Pochettino, exhausted as he was, had got a kind of a slightly over the hill team to that point, which suggested that if you gave him the funds and the resources and the backup that he needed, we could have pushed on, but it turned into going backwards.
Yeah, we could have been something. I do wonder, just going back to Levy, or Levy's role at that stage. I do wonder, I digress a bit, Simon. I wonder, Man City have made a settlement today, seemingly with the Premier League over various stuff. I wonder whether Levy, really in his heart of hearts, always thought that he was putting Spurs on a sustainable footing where everybody else was going to be facing a load of legal challenges and worse, possibly, who knows, point deductions, relegations and all the rest, etc. And I wonder whether he, and at some points in time, he must have maybe thought that that was coming to fruition, and then obviously now it kind of hasn't. But sorry, going back to your question, yeah, I do wonder with the 2019, was that the end of a great team rather than, as you say, we were kind of maybe Poch was running out of gas, and maybe that team was a bit as well, and then would have needed a whacking great big investment maybe, and then obviously we then went into the end game for Poch and so on and so forth.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, actually. Just actually going back to your previous point about, Levy seemingly obeying the rules and creating a financially sustainable and self-sustaining club. It looks as though, well, we know for a fact, don't we, that Chelsea flouted the rules and they won everything. Man City allegedly flouted all the rules. They won everything. Liverpool probably are the exception here. They seem to have done things the right way round and still, they've been successful, but not to the extent that we've seen City and Chelsea. Arsenal, to a lesser extent, did pretty well for a spell. Of course, they don't win things now, do they? They're not like us. Julie, take us on from Irving Scholar, the fan, to Alan Sugar.
Yes. Well, sorry, excuse me. Of course, we're sort of moving on to the late 80s, 90s, by which time Spurs were more or less bankrupt and having to sell Gaza to make ends meet. I think by then Spurs were already a laughing stock. And of course, then we come to Alan Sugar, very, very smart businessman who knew what was on the horizon, Sky TV, the Premier League. And he owned the business that could make the satellite dishes for Sky. And that's why he got involved. And of course, the narrative about Alan Sugar is that he steadied the ship. Basically, he saved the club. Well, he probably did. But I mean, there's a marvellous book by Gareth Dace called Is Gascoigne Going to Have a Crack, which is about Spurs in the 90s. And there were moments in the 90s which were fantastic. Like, well, again, back to Alan Sugar. He's the guy who signed Jurgen Klinsmann twice. But a lot of the time, particularly towards the end, Spurs nearly got relegated. He also hired George Graham as a manager. I think I just remember the 90s basically as terrible, terrible football with really, really mediocre players, just with the odd, shining light like Klinsmann, Teddy Sheringham. There are a few more. Some wonderful dramas, Ossie Ardelo's trying to recreate the Brazil team of, what was it, the early 70s, things like that. The Venables.
That was the 9.
That's right. Which Ange got close to, didn't quite make it. But yeah, the Terry Venables drama, all that. It was really, really, if you were a reporter, it was a really interesting decade. Spurs continued to be a laughing stock. So there was a kind of relief, I think, when ENIC sort of arrived and took over. I think they arrived in the year 2000, but they didn't have full whack till 2007. I'm not completely sure about that, by which time, we'd had other various comedies like, Glenn Hoddle as manager, all that sort of stuff. Buying strikers who perhaps only scored one goal. I'm trying to remember who it was. Was it Postiga who only scored one? But Spurs just became a comedy outfit. And to a certain extent, I do feel grateful to Daniel Levy for at least sort of trying to get us out of that comedy reputation. Although it really, it's been hard, hasn't it? The last 20 years, the last 25 years under Enoch and Levy, it has been hard with sort of, there have been sort of some light moments, but dear, I don't know what's going to the new guy.
You actually raised an interesting thought there, actually, Julie, about Spurs down the years. As we sort of go back through, I started going in 1970. I think Kev started going shortly after that.
Yeah,
Julie, you've been going longer than that. Dave, I know you were sort of a similar vintage. And we've always had great players, the odd great player, but we've never really had great teams with the occasional exception. So, we had people like Hoddle and Gaza and Ginola and Klinsmann and people like that. But yet there was no great impetus to put that all together in a great team. So the last great team really was, well, I suppose the double side. And the last really good team that I remember, apart from, I suppose, the team that struggled its way to the European Champions League final, was the one of 87, I think, when we had Clive Allen, Hoddle, Waddle, good players, and not a bad team. Julie, come on, you're desperate to put me right.
The 1981 team, Garton Archie, Steve Perryman, was a fantastic team.
Yeah.
We had Delace and Villa. I think that more than a double team, that's my favourite Spurs team ever.
Oh, wow. Any team with Hoddle in was my favourite team, but with
FA Cup. We'd been relegated in the mid-70s, and now we were back on the big stage. It was just a wonderful time to be Spurs. Winning again in '82, the UEFA Cup in '84. I mean, that was a golden era to be a Spurs supporter.
Dave?
I do agree with Julie about that. I thought, in particular, actually, the '82 team. So we were 1-0 up at Wembley over Liverpool I think it was the Milk Cup final, wasn't it, at that point? The Milk Cup final, and then Ronnie Whelan equalised to spoil our day, and then it all went downhill. But at that point, I believe we were in the semi-final, maybe it was only the quarter-final at that stage, the FA Cup. We were more or less through to the semi-final of the Cup Winners' Cup, got kicked out of that by Barcelona. Terrible night at the Lane there, I remember. But I think, and we were second or third in the league, but with games in hand coming out of our ears. And I think we were the best team in the country that year, without a doubt. And actually, we should have won the league that year, really. But fixture congestion was, unprecedented, at least at that time. It was certainly never equalled again until the Champions League era.
Yeah, and we came close, didn't we, under Poch a couple of times, but I wouldn't call those great teams. I'd call them pretty good teams. Ericsson and Harry Kane at their peak, sort of peaking for us, and Sonny and so on. All right, well, look, we've mentioned the Champions League, and it's pretty clear to me that we're going to win it this season, because the Champions League draw came out a couple of weeks ago, and it's so absolutely ridiculously easy for us. Frankfurt, Dortmund, Slavia Prague, PSG. I mean, come on, they were lucky to beat us. Bodo Glimt, Copenhagen, Monaco, and Villarreal. That's like, honestly, that's like a Carabao Cup, first round bunch of nobodies. Kev, we're going to walk this, aren't we?
Well, Simon, I don't want to be controversial, as you know, but I'm not entirely convinced. I do think, as a result of that transfer window, we've got a much better... I could just see us just going straight out, a couple of months ago. And now I think the squad is so much better, just with those sort of 3 or 4 additions. And so I think we're gonna do decently. I don't know what I mean by that, but sort of quarterfinal sort of stage. I think we're gonna have a couple of good wins.
Top 8, top 16 to make sure we
top 16. I think.
Okay.
I don't think we're going to disgrace ourselves, but we're not going to win it.
Well, I beg to differ. Dave, come on, back me up here.
I think we need to get Manchester City if we do get through to the last 16. That would be the obvious, wouldn't it? Because then we can, we're absolutely certain to turn them over, and then who knows? Who knows after that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, we beat Bodo Glimt, we beat Frankfurt on our way to glory in the, what's it called? That thing.
Europa.
And that's it. We've got, Dortmund, we always clobber Dortmund. Copenhagen, come on. Denmark, Danish, how good can they be? So I do think we've got a decent chance. Julie, where's the Champions League final going to be played? Because we need to be booking, don't we?
I have no idea. this is terrible. I'm absolutely lost for words. All I was going to say was that when you said Copenhagen, I thought, Copenhagen, that's our Norwich City or our West Brom or our Ipswich Town. That's the one that, we're going to lose to.
All right. Well, look, I think I think the consensus is we're probably going to win the Champions League, but I don't want to. Let's revisit this as we go along the competition. Now then, Kev, we're going to sort of get into ranting territory here. You've got an issue with our fabulous stadium. Come on, that can't be right.
I do. And I suppose I've been thinking about it a lot because, Dave said earlier, Levy's big legacy is the stadium. And I have no problem with that. I think that's true. The thing is, I don't really love it. And I don't know whether I will ever love it. I loved the last slightly, run down, seen better days stadium because that's the stadium that I sort of grew up with. And so there's something about just being old, I think, and not like in these newfangled stadiums where things work. I mean, every time I see it, as I'm walking down, whichever way I'm sort of walking towards the stadium and it appears, there is something fabulous about that. So I'm not saying, it's a terrible football stadium, because obviously it's not, but it doesn't feel like home to me. I don't know whether, I'm unusual in that. I usually go with my daughter, who's obviously a different generation. So she doesn't have that same connection with the old ground. And I think we can be proud of it. It is the best. It is stadium in many levels. I don't know about it. Obviously been to the Everton ground. It'd be interesting to see how their fans sort of respond to that, and how we all feel about that. Is it better because it was made a few years, constructed a few years after ours? I don't know. I don't love it. I'm one of those people who always seem to miss out on the additional tickets on top of the season ticket. So I never seem to end up actually being in my own season ticket space. So then I have to try and find one somewhere else. And I can never find my seat. It feels like being in a stadium I've never been in before. And it doesn't feel right to me.
What you mean, it's kind of the old stadium, and it was steeped in history. That's where we won stuff. Back in the day, where Dave Mackay played on that pitch. On the other hand, when I started going to Spurs in 1970, my seat was made of wood, and I used to seriously get splinters from that shitty seat. Julie, are you a new stadium fan?
I absolutely adore the new stadium because it's got proper ladies' loo. I mean, I'm a practical person. Because a lifetime of going to stadia where there was no facilities for ladies. And, I used to have to get sort of friends and fellow football reporters to stand outside the gents I was using. I love it. It's wonderful. I think it's a smashing place. The media room, which is a cafe during the week for the locals, the people who work there, they're local people. That is one thing that the Daniel Levy regime did really well. They really did it. They've got a local workforce who are really happy to work there. They're helpful. They're nice to you. They love the place. It's fantastic. I hated the kind of middle White Hart, the one from, the Irving Scholar era. I did love the old proper White, the one where, you've got some gates and then behind it is that big saying Tottenham Hotspur Football Club. I mean, when you went to Spurs those days, you knew you'd gone to Spurs. The white bad White Hart Lane of the 80s and the 90s and, the earliest part of this century. It just looked like some sort of crap hotel, I thought. I didn't reckon it at all. I'd like to stand where where I was sitting. I love the new one and I love the old one.
Well, I personally love the new stadium. I much prefer it to the old stadiums. With the wooden one and the subsequent. I mean, that crappy big West Stand. But there was no room at the back of it. You couldn't move, and it was a grim place to be at half time. So one thing that Dave, we talk about legacies, Levy's legacy being the stadium. We bought a crappy, house that was falling to pieces with a crappy outbuilding, and we knocked everything down and smashed everything to pieces and put it all back together again and created the house I'm sitting in now, and we love it. I was kind of project managing on behalf of the Lipson family, and every single day brought 50 new issues for me to deal with for this pissy little house in Crouch End. And I'm just thinking, what did Levy have to deal with? Because he project managed it for Spurs. What did he have to deal with? Do you remember there was that building that they wouldn't be bought out? So there was the mysterious fire and all kinds of things at the obstacles, and his obstinacy and his, dedication to getting this done. People I don't think quite realize what that took.
Absolutely incredible, isn't it? And that, as you imply as well, I mean, it was delivered. I don't really remember what the budget was, but it wasn't vastly over budget, was it? It certainly didn't bankrupt the club. And those kind of projects have got a horrible habit, haven't they, at the national level, almost all of them, to kind of virtually bankrupt the entire country. So I think he's, even if Kev doesn't absolutely love it, I think there is a little bit of that of our lost youth, isn't there, to some degree as well, of course, that sort of magical. I remember first going in, I think it was 1973, and walking there with my dad. We always used to park in a back street way back up in White Hart Lane and off White Hart Lane by one of the schools up there, and all these people drawn like magnets and what have you towards the ground. It was kind of that magical, and you can kind of remember that first time you went there as it almost, it's very stuck in your mind. But no, I think he did an incredible job, and as Judy says, that kind of involvement of the local community that he's really, and the regeneration of the local community that he's sort of on the back of that. Now, you can debate about whether Haringey Council should have been chipping into it. I suppose that's a slightly different story again. But certainly he did an unbelievable job in that respect.
I think he conned Haringey Council, didn't he? Because he pretended we were going to move to Stratford, and they thought we can't lose Spurs, or we'll have to give in to everything Daniel Levy requires, and I think that was a brilliant move. He wasn't showing disloyalty to the area by any means. But something we've talked about, you mentioned it a couple of times during the course of conversation today, that we talk about the local influence of a club and how little modern big clubs kind of are part of their community, a product of their community. We had Harry Kane, and that's about as much as we could, all right, but Harry Winks, okay. The links they're corporate now. These are companies, and we have a load of foreign players. We have management that doesn't understand the offside law. Did Peter Charrington ever been to a football match? I don't know. But the thing is, days when there was that, we had those links with the local community are gone, aren't they, really?
Yeah, I can't really see an easy way out of that. I mean, I think that, as we've said all the way along, that the money dominates. The foreign players obviously have been a huge boon. So I'm absolutely not in any way going back to some kind of like bygone era where the British or English players are going to dominate the league altogether. But at the same time, surely there must be something that the authorities, and it would need to be something, I guess, at a European level, really, to ensure that they have some representation from their youth ranks, I guess, or from people born within, I don't know, born within 20-mile radius of the ground or something like that. Again, you're in danger of going back to how Yorkshire used to run their cricket club moons and moons ago, and they've long given that up as well. But I don't know how you do that, because it does seem like we've lost something there.
Yeah.
And it's difficult, I guess it's difficult in the modern era for that to ever be regained, really.
It is. I think you're right.
I think, I just want to say, I think it was Julie using the word haberdashery earlier that sort of made me think, we're living in a post-haberdashery world. And the stadium, in a way, maybe the stadium represents to me the fact that we are living in a post-haberdashery world, and it's, and so a lot of my not loving it, and I would say, I think the truth is not loving it yet is probably the truth. The fact that I don't love it is because it is a symbol of something new, and it's a symbol of the changes in football and the changes in society and that whole prioritisation of everything. So there's a little bit of me that sort of resists that, I think.
For what it's worth, Kev, I went to a school called Haberdashers, so I'm very much post-haberdashery these days. Let's move on, because before we get to some West Ham predictions, I just want to raise this. Julie, I know you... Listen, this is me. If I see the new kit coming out, I have to buy that new kit, and I have to get it onto my big fat belly and parade around thinking I look like Cutie Romero. They're great, aren't they, these new kits? Love them.
Well, I am the mother of sons, so I've spent, many, many years hating football shirts because, that's what they want. This is just the spirit of inquiry, really. What do men see in football? I really want to know. This horrible shiny, slimy fabric. They look awful on anybody who hasn't got a professional footballer's bod. The cheap is in Newcastle where you don't wear one at all. But I'm speaking as the mother of a Newcastle supporting son, so I know this. It is football shirts. They're horrid colours, sort of bile, dog thick, custard that's gone off, cowpat. I don't know why people actually want to wear a football shirt. And if there was only a sort of a female oriented football shirt, I wouldn't mind one, if it had maybe a Peter Pan collar and, and a sort of little pocket at the front where, with Romero's name embroidered on the pocket. I wouldn't mind that at all.
And that's got to be a useful pocket, hasn't it? It's got to be a useful pocket.
Where you put your mobile or your door.
Yeah, of course.
It's pretty. It's got Romero on. That's what I'd want, and it would have to be a nice colour.
Can I just throw? I hate to interrupt this diatribe, but I do need to ask the male members of the panel today. Dave, you ever bought a football shirt, a Spurs shirt?
I have had Spurs shirts, but not since the Holston era, so that would date it a little bit long way back. But I was never as, if we were looking, as you said, sort of mentioned Cutie or I watched the Sky documentary on Mickey the other day, which was very good. So I've never been as good looking as Cutie or Kudus to bring in a new guy or as Mickey. I was skinny at one time, but I'm not skinny anymore. And Julie's absolutely right. I haven't got the body or anything else to go with the shirt at all. So I definitely side with Julie on this one for sure.
Well, I speak as someone who's never been skinny and never bought a football shirt ever. So I can't see the point. I don't want to walk around the streets in between matches wearing a Spurs shirt. And I certainly don't want to wear it to Spurs. I actually went to a Spurs match. They were playing Arsenal. And I was walking behind some Spurs fans. And there's an Arsenal fan walking the other way in his Arsenal shirt. And the Spurs fan just smashed him in the face. And he said, well, you shouldn't wear it, mate. You shouldn't wear it. And I thought, do you know what? You should never wear it. And as a point of principle, don't wear it. It's trouble. And it invites violent responses. Kev, ever bought one of the Spurs new kit specials?
No. But I bought a lot of sort of shirts that are sort of Spurs related, but they're not. They don't look like I am actually playing for the team, because I've never got away with that. Even 30 years ago, I wouldn't have got away with that. So I've got a proper North T-shirt that I do wear out now and again.
Has it got Kev on the back?
It hasn't got Kev.
No.
I was thinking about going to a match and walking behind these guys, and one of them just had tattoos everywhere, and he had NF tattoos, and he was wearing a Defoe shirt. And I didn't quite know I don't know whether that was a good thing or a bad thing. I think it was probably a good thing. I would never wear a player's name on the back of the shirt. I'm not sure why. I've never really thought about it before, but it's asking for trouble. It's asking for trouble, in my view.
Okay, look, I've got a little random rant before we get on to West Ham, because we are running short of time. A little random rant. Now, if you're watching this, you'll see that I'm holding up a screen protector. Screen protector. Has anybody ever put a screen protector on their phone and not instantly had bubbles and bits of fluff and bits of crap underneath it? And then you take the screen protector off and you just get more fluff and bubbles and crap. Has anyone ever put one of these on and it's clean? Anyone? Dave? Well, you would, because you're a microbiologist. You know how to do that.
No, but I mean, I managed to do microbiology in the lab reasonably safely for a few years, and I've passed that stage now. But no, I did buy one quite recently, Simon. I will send you a link. There are some that are totally idiot-proof, and I had many where I had all bits of hairs and goodness knows what underneath. But no, there's some new ones. I'll send you a link.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Look, we've got a couple of minutes left to discuss by how many goals we're going to beat West Ham, who, of course, I was going to say resurgent West Ham, typically, who had a good win the other day. Let's start with Julie. How many goals? And of course, we've got Moani and Simons and Kudus, all our new boys playing. Come on, we're going to slaughter them, aren't we?
I think it's probably going to be quite a rough game but I feel quite not anxious about it for whatever reason. But remember that last week I prophesied that we'd smash Bournemouth 4-1. So please don't take any notice of anything I say ever again.
Okay, Kev, it's an easy one, isn't it?
Yeah, I think I wish we had Bowen. You know, I wish somehow we could have got him. I think without it though, they're a mediocre at best team. We're a better team. I'm going to go. I think I went 3-2 against Bournemouth, and I'm going to go 3-2 again.
Cool, I like that.
To us,
Bowen is actually a very good player. He is the best non-international quality footballer in the league. In other words, I just think he's so effective for West Ham. He's such a brilliant league player. He just doesn't have that international kind of gloss about him, which is a shame because he's tremendous, and I'd love to have him on board. Dave, what's the score?
I think 3-1, but I guess that 3-1 for Spurs, but that performance against Bournemouth was a bit of a worry, wasn't it? Because it really was not. And I thought I was so going into that game because we'd had a whole week off. Bournemouth had played in the Carabao. I thought they're going to be rested. Frank's going to have got a bit more, the tweaks in there. And then it just absolutely nothing, wasn't it? But yeah, 3-1 Spurs.
Okay. Well, I'm going for 3-0 because, of course, we don't, apart from Bournemouth, we don't let goals in anymore. And I mean, in all serious note, and we are struggling for goals. I don't know whether Brennan Johnson is going to get a game now, given our acquisitions, and he's comfortably our best and most clinical finisher. So I don't know. Richie had a horror game last week. I don't know whether Solanke is going to be fit. So I'll just go for the 3-0, and we'll revisit this next week, see by how many goals we're out. So look, that's it. We are done. That's episode 4 of Nice One, Cyril. Thanks to Kevin Acott, as ever, and of course, Welch, Dame Julie Welch, and Dave Bradshaw. You know what? I'm going to give you, for a newbie, I'm going to give you a solid 7.
Thank you. That's very kind.
Out of 100. So it was...
I'll take anything.
No, it was a brilliant contribution. Thank you. And I would love to have you back on anytime you're available.
No, I was just waving goodbye to everybody. That's all.
You're just waving. All right. Well, look, that's it. Thanks for joining us here on Nice One, Cyril. We'll be back next week. Have a great week. Come on, you Spurs.